Happy Thursday, everybody, and welcome to Kayak Fishing Weekly, the show here on the Serious Angler Podcast Network that is dedicated to everything kayak fishing. I'm here with my counterpart, Mr. Justin Largen, and of course,
Hey.
I'm your host, Bailey Egbert. Justin, what's going on, man?
Oh, not too much. Happy New Year. New
Yeah,
New
welcome to
Year's.
2024.
Yeah. Well, how does the saying go? New Year, same me.
Yeah, well, yeah. There's more sayings that are pretty similar to that, but I don't know if we should say them on here. But yeah, another year in the trenches. It's funny that a date. I think I was telling Andy this over on Serious Angler. It's like it's funny that a date, a calendar, just changing the number of it, people look at like as a roadblock or a milestone. That once they cross that 31st of December to January 1st, they're like, "Oh my god, life's different. Everything's changing like that." It's a new day. I mean, it's nice. It's like a mental note of like, "Hey, I should work on things." A moment of reflection.
Exactly. Good occasion to stop and kind of take stock of where you're going and where you want to be going and you know.
Yeah,
But yeah, at the end of the day, it is just another.
yeah.
it's
It's just
it's
another day.
what was it this year? A Monday instead of.
Yeah. And so I started on a Monday. Great. Awesome. Start the year on a freaking Monday. Uh, but dude, I mean, so everybody's putting out their resolutions, things like that. What are your resolutions from a kayak fishing sense?
From a fishing standpoint,
Yeah.
well, I guess it's pretty basic. But obviously, I want to catch more fish. But I want to be more consistent in tournaments. I don't know how many I'm going to fish this year, if it's going to be quite as many as I've done the last few years. But I've had some really good finishes, but like last year I had a lot of bombs too, and or just middle of the pack or below, just finishes I wasn't happy with, and I want to be more consistent this year. Where I'd love to have some top five, top 10 finishes, but I really want to be more consistent across the board than I've been. So that's my one goal. What
I
about
hear
you?
that.
You got big plans, big goals?
I mean, it's gonna be an interesting year for me because I'm kind of still in this stage of I don't really know what my year is gonna look like because still got some sponsor talks and things going like that that could enable me to do more if I wanted to.
Hmm.
Which I do. I definitely want to travel the country more and fish more new lakes and more bigger style tournaments. Like in a perfect world, I'd be fishing every single Bassmaster and Hobie event. Like in a perfect world.
Yeah,
But
if only.
like many people, I have a job, and money is only flows so much for me over here, especially living in New York. Our state likes to take most of it.
Mm.
Um, but for me, man, this year the way I'm looking at things is um, I'm definitely going to be doing actually more tournaments. Looking at my schedule for the year, um, I fished every single local event um, for the one trail NYKBF this past year, but I'm going to fish another trail, the Slay Nation one that's local. I'm going to do both this year, double dipping those. Try to hit some Hobies, some Bassmasters. Just gonna cherry pick on what looks fun. If I do good, great. One thing or another, I'm gonna go have fun and learn. But my biggest goal for this year, man, I've been kind of going through this phase of like a mental transition of like not really transition, but trying to I guess upgrade and improve myself, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
Kind of change some habits, things like that, using it as I talk about in that cliche New Year's resolution standpoint. But I'm hopeful that my self discipline will keep those going. But to not make it long
That's
winded, I
that's
want
the other one
to.
that I've got.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, dude. We could kind of go down that rabbit hole. But from a fishing sense, I want to, as much as I'm fishing tournaments, I want to bring back the adventure side of kayak fishing for me, where I thoroughly enjoy going out in a tournament or even just fun fishing with my two graphs live, things like that, and beating up on fish. But some of the most fun that I had this past year was all I brought was one graph uh, and two different rods, limited amount of tackle, like what I wanted to fish with, not like what I think they'll eat. When I wanted to, like, if they weren't going to eat it, I didn't care type of deal.
Top
And
order.
yeah, and went up to the Adirondacks in New York and fished some lakes that like these lakes, you go out there and you almost guarantee you're gonna have it to yourself because they're so remote. Slept in the trucks, camped out with my buddy Brandon Lewis, hit these lakes. Like they're the kind of like stereotypical lake where we woke up sleeping in the truck, literally almost hit a black bear on the way up there. And like loons are you can hear loons on the lake as you're getting ready to launch in the morning. Like it was like perfect. And we're catching largemouth and smallmouth on poppers and choppos and things like that, like catching them how we wanted to catch them. I want to do more of that. My goal this year, dude, my ultimate goal this year is to go a week sleeping in my truck in the Adirondacks, fishing 1 to 2 new lakes a day and film the whole thing.
That's awesome.
Like get
Dude, if
two,
you
like bring a jig, a swim bait, and a top water, and that would be I'm good. That's all I need.
dude, if you need a travel buddy, hit me up.
Hey, I will let you know. We'll slap dates on and we'll go we'll pick out the lakes that we're gonna go try and hit. And some of them are cool because like there was one that I'm actually really bummed about this because I lost the footage. The SD card, I can't even remember the technical term, but basically the SD card fried. But I had to go through a field and down this like really kind of sketchy trail with my truck. Like off-roading, like thank God we're gonna get into it in today's show talking about transportation for kayaks. If I had my old Nissan Altima, there was no way I was getting to this place. But it was super cool. Got in there and I freaking caught a 5-pounder like in the first 5 minutes. It
Nice.
was freaking awesome. But um, yeah, man, I just wanted more adventure back into things. Like I love the competitive side. I love tournament fishing, and I love, obviously being out in Lake Erie, using live to catch big smallies and stuff like that. But there's something about going back to the roots, no electronics, and just enjoying nature and just catching them how you want to catch them.
Yeah, I got to do a lot of that in 23, so hopefully I'll still get to do some in 24 too, but you're right, it is different, and I'm addicted to just that style of fishing, keeping it simple, and backwaters place is hard to get into. It's really fun to catch them that way.
100%. And it'll probably be a week of that, and I'll be like, man, I'm kind of craving going and dropping a jig on one's head on live. There's something addicting though about being in 30 foot of water and watching a 5-pound smallmouth come rocket up 20 feet and swim away with your drop shot in its mouth. Like, and watching all of that happen, giggling like a little kid. But
I I would not
there's,
know it the first thing about that.
well, we're gonna have to, you're gonna try it this year. It's
30 feet, I don't know if I've ever caught one out of 30 feet.
really,
I
oh
don't
man,
know. I know I've caught them in 20, but I don't know that I've ever caught one out of 30 that wasn't, just, like, suspended up near the surface.
I have caught a bass on the bottom in 71 foot of water. That was the deepest I ever caught one. I don't know if I mean, I'm sure I could beat that. I don't want to. Like, I don't wanna kill one, like,
Yeah,
screwing it up, you know? Uh, so yeah, it
71, that's impressive.
was pretty deep, man. But going back to get in today's show, because there's not much news from last week to this week, in the kayak fishing space. Some rumblings of things that are going on that I'm pretty excited about, and that's as far as I will take that notion. But I'm pretty excited about the future of kayak fishing right now. But what I'll say is what I mentioned earlier about trying to get to that one lake and off-roading to get there. Is our show is going to be about the different methods of kayak transportation from a vehicle standpoint, the pros and cons of each. And this is going to be, I mean, this could be for somebody, I'll say like myself, that is factoring in, should I get a trailer? And we'll get into that in a little bit. Or it could be for somebody that literally is getting a kayak that's like, how should I transport this? I literally have a car. What's my best method of doing it? We're going to go into some different methods. But Justin, I would say the prime three that we're going to go over is car topping, truck bed, and trailer. We missing any?
I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe if there's another way, maybe if you live on a lake or something and are just dragging it down to the water, but
Yeah.
the ways that most of us are doing it is gonna be one of those 3.
I think I'm the only one. I'm thinking of it now, literally, because the dealer I go through, Morgan Marine, that I work with, he's literally doing it, or he did it for Christmas. is Hobie the iTrek has like that backpack hockey bag deal. It comes in
Ah,
like the roller bag, so you can
yeah.
fly. Technically, you can fly with your kayak. It's pretty hard to carry on a kayak too.
I thought about that. If I ever end up with one of those, and decide to, go fish, I could theoretically just take that thing with me on the plane and just bum some tackle off somebody when I get, out west or wherever. It might be honestly cheaper to go that route than to drive to Texas multiple times. But
That might not be a bad method. Like literally fly with your kayak and then just take a box of like a couple tackle boxes, whatever, shove it in there, pay 30 to 40 bucks, whatever it is for shipping, and ship your tackle to wherever you're going. It's
yeah,
actually hard to get rods, but you can do a
yeah,
lot.
rods would be tricky. You could do tubes. I don't know how it works on planes. I know they're expensive if you get those. I think Flambeau makes the great big expandable
Yeah.
one. I've
Mm.
shipped rods to myself cross country, and it was not cheap.
They're
But
almost
I don't
certain to
know.
break.
Yeah, because I don't know. I don't trust the airline people too much. Sorry for any of them that are listening, but
Yeah.
I've still got cracks on my laptop from them throwing my bags around.
Dang.
So yeah,
I always carry my laptop on with me, but not to get into a TSA complaint session here.
yeah, this is kind of a kayak fishing show.
Kind of, kind of. It's called Kayak Fishing Weekly, but we talk about a little bit about kayak fishing, not much. All right, let's get into the first one. I think the first one is, I'll say, what's simplest in regards to. I mean, it's how I started transporting a kayak outside of stealing my dad's truck before I had my own vehicle.
Same here.
But car topping, it may look a little intimidating at first, at least for somebody like me, when you're trying to figure out how the heck you're going to do it and do it well, where it's not flying off when you're going 50 miles an hour on the highway. Um, you car topped before?
Car topping is what I did up until 2022. I've probably done it that way for more than 10 years. And before I car topped a kayak, I car topped that pond prowler, and that thing is way heavier than, than the kayak.
That's a beast.
And I didn't use any. Well, I eventually got a system for kind of making it easy to roll it up there. But the very first vehicle that I owned, it was an older model Jeep, and I tore the side of that thing, just sanded it all down from sliding that boat up on top of there. But
Yeah,
but
we'll
yeah,
get
I've
into some methods about it here in a second. But what car did you use to car top?
it was I think it was a Grand Cherokee. I don't even remember the year on it anymore, but um, I've I like the vehicle, and it does a good job. Now the only thing that I've seen I've seen these, what are they called? Like a weight restriction on some of these roof racks, and I checked even my newer vehicle, I wanna say it's right around 100 pounds. It says it's not designed to take more than 100 pounds on that rack, but I see guys put a pro angler up on there, so I don't know if it varies from vehicle to vehicle, but I know my Outback is kinda pushing the limits, and
Yeah,
I've done it with an Outback. Outback is the heaviest, though, that I've tried to car top. And again, maybe somebody else's vehicle is different. I know if you get a Wrangler, they have these. I don't even remember the manufacturer, but they have these basically a roof rack that mounts onto the frame that can take like triple that weight. It extremely rugged, and it's like I said, it's somehow they bolted onto the frame, and I mean, it goes all the way up the sides, big basket on top, and those could take I think like 300 pounds. But the stuff that I got, I think mine's I can't remember if it's Yakima or Thule, if I'm even saying that right. But
both
it's
make them. I mean, both make those, as well as like Malone makes some good ones that are affordable.
mm,
Um, but I feel like Yakima makes the best ones. They usually make the best everything for kayak transportation, at least at this
mm.
point. There's some good custom things we'll get into later on, but um, car topping, to preface this, I had a Nissan Altima that I car topped a Wilderness Radar 135, and then I car topped a Hobie Pro Angler 12. And I car topped that one for a while.
Whew. Now,
I
does that thing come with a roof rack, or were you getting the portable? Okay.
I had this thing as hillbilly. I shouldn't say hillbilly. More Amazon slash hillbilly hybrid. Like
Okay.
I had Maloney. I don't. Somebody's gonna be cursing me out for how I'm pronouncing that right now.
I always
Uh,
called it Malone.
Malone. I had the suction cup straps for up top. So like the what do you call it? The lever, the bar that you'd have, you'd suction cup that down to the top of the car. And I hadn't keep
Okay.
in mind I had a sunroof in this car. So I had to
Ooh.
do it the thing spaced out around the window in the front to have it not be too close together because there's two bars, one you put in the front towards like above where you're driving, and then in the back to space them out to like obviously distribute the weight. And so I had to suction cup them, but the way that they would fasten was I had to go through the doors of the car and put it through and then tighten. So I had straps above my head when I was driving and some in the back too, which was fun because like my rods would get stuck in there and stuff. But I would have to strap them in, and every time I'd stop for gas or something like that, or every time I go to leave or whatever, I'd always have to tighten those things because they wouldn't stay tight. Um,
Eesh.
but but honestly,
Sketchy.
dude, it was sketchy. And that's why I did what I did with mine was I had those bars there, and people in New York, or honestly, I fished the first whole year of Hobie's 4 events, I think, um, doing this. So people have seen this before. There's pictures around. It's pretty funny. Um, but I took a paracord and lifted the front hood of my car. And there's a little latch that, obviously for the front that latches down and keeps your front hood from obviously flying up. Um, I put paracord in there, did a crazy big knot to like make sure this thing wasn't coming out. And I had like this heavy duty, like giant, bigger than my hands carabiner that would latch around the front handle of the kayak, especially like the pro angle that has that heavy duty handle in the front. I
Mhm.
latched around the front. What I would do is I'd push it back when I get it on there so that that front line was taut, and that's when I would strap them in. But what I used to do to get it on there was I took a bath mat and put it on the trunk, and I'd put the nose on the trunk from the side of the car, and then from there I would go to the back and just slide it up onto the bars, and like my back windshield and stuff was all scratched out too from like missing it or having mud and stuff on it, and then would strap it down from the side. So it's doable. I've never seen a Pro Angler 14 car topped, but you can do a Pro Angler for sure, and that's definitely up there on the bigger side of
Yeah.
kayaks. But it's doable, and it worked for a while. I mean, I've done long road trips. Fun fact: I was going. See that little flag up there in the corner? That is the
Yeah.
2021 Bassmaster Kayak Championship. They handed out like these little flags for them, I guess.
Possum Kingdom.
It was down in Possum Kingdom. Um, I was in Missouri, car topping this kayak, and I was stopping off at a hotel right at the exit to get on to go to the Bass Pro Shops there, and I get rear-ended where to the point where like my trunk was so crumpled up that you could stick your hand in the left side and steal all my tackle that I'd packed in there. Thank God I had all soft plastics on that side because anything else that I had there was a goner. But my car still worked, and I drove all the way back down to Texas with my trunk opened up and worked the classic and everything, which was funny because they had me valet my car, which was hilarious. Cartop this we're like around like all these Bass Pros that got like these decked out F-250s wrapped, looks nice, shiny. And then here comes this Nissan Altima half crumpled with a kayak on top. And I'm valeting it, dude. It was the funniest sight. My boss was laughing at me as I pull up to the hotel. But story aside, you can be surprised what you can do with those things. But nonetheless, there are pros and cons. And we're gonna go through each method and give you guys a pros and cons of each. But you want to go ahead and kick us off with the pros before I go on another tangent about how my Nissan Altima was a beast?
Sure. Well, for me, the biggest pro is that it's good for lightweight kayaks. It's a simple way to transport it, and it gives you the ability to launch anywhere. Where with a trailer, you kind of need maybe you don't need it to be the fanciest, boat, like maybe not to the level of if you're going to launch a bass boat, but you need to have some kind of a ramp if you're going to back a trailer. But for a car top, I mean, anywhere you can drive to, you can get. And then even if you're not necessarily, dropping yourself right at the water, you've got your Boondocks landing gear. I think Native has a similar system. You've got the ability to, basically as far as you're willing to drag it, You can get to a lot more places with that Cartop system and a lighter weight boat. To me, that's the biggest draw, and that was probably what drew me to that initially. And I don't know, it's probably not fair. Initially, my kayak was so small or so lightweight that it didn't make sense to get a trailer. I didn't have a truck, so that was really the only option when I started. But it was definitely good for getting back into places off the beaten path and not needing, a nice fancy ramp.
There's a it's funny. So when we look on these notes here, um, pending how you do it, you can definitely get better mileage. Pending what car you have, things like that. One thing I noticed, and this was so pre getting rear-ended. I had got great mileage. Post rear-ended, I had half the thing sticking out like a wing, so I didn't really get very good mileage because it was basically this wind catcher. Uh, but pending the vehicle, you can get pretty good mileage car topping. Obviously, it
Yeah.
acts as a sail, so you're not going to get your max car's capacity, but it does make when you're transporting securely, it makes it pretty dang easy. One thing too, I'd say they're on the secure side, like when you're stopping somewhere, more just because it looks like a huge pain in the butt for anybody to try to steal.
Mhm.
It is hard to lock something like this. I've seen people try to use like bike locks and things like that. You can do that. Like I've thought about in the past using the rail like a bike lock to go through the hull of the Hobie and lock that in, but it ended up becoming a giant ear sore to try to travel with because it would just be knocking against the bars of the
Mm.
Hobie. It would be obnoxious.
Right on the whole way.
Yeah, but I mean, I've stayed in some pretty sketchy stuff with that, with the car and the kayak on top, and I think most people look at that and they're like, "Man, I could steal that." They're like, "But it looks
Dude,
like a pain."
mine lived on top of my car for probably the first. I'm trying to think. I lived in different apartments in the Northern Virginia area, but and some of them, you had a little bit of a yard or a little bit of space that was yours outdoor. But I had a couple places that I lived where there was no place to put a kayak. There was barely even parking available. And in those places, that kayak was I had a commander, a Water Systems commander, and then after that I had a radar, the 115X, I think it was. Was it, is that the radar? No, the ride. Sorry. The radar's the new one. Had a
Mhm.
ride 115X, and they just stayed up there. I'd strap it in and just leave it up there. I'd drive to work with it up there, and every once in a while, I'd find a place to stick it for a while, but I mean, it lived up there, and I never had a problem. I never had it disappear. I never had anybody try to cut the ropes and take it. Maybe I was just lucky, but I think you're right. It looks like a pain in the ass to grab that. Like,
Yeah,
unless you've got a truck or something, what most people driving down the highway can't just take it.
yeah. The only issue I ever ran into from a driving standpoint was in heavy winds, crosswinds, it would any sort of lucid like the pro angle's a heavier kayak, obviously. So it would like move the nose side to side. But as long as my front line was taut, it wasn't gonna shift side to side. It was more making sure the straps was making so the kayak couldn't move left to right. But
Mm,
the nose sometimes it would shift, it would shimmy a little bit, which would be fine for the
gotcha.
most part because then when you pull off the next time, you could strap it up and tighten it a little bit more. Um, but the one thing we have here from a con, which I find hilarious that you put this in here, is don't use ratchet straps, which I knew a bunch of people said not to do, which I used ratchet straps, which
I
is
did
probably
too.
why my Hobie was warped at the end of the time that I was using
I did
it.
too. That my very first kayak was a Commander, the 120, 12-foot model, and it was kind of a canoe kayak hybrid. So it had sides that came up raised, and it had something that maybe there's other kayaks that have it now, but it had a sit-in kind of seat. It was open top, sit-in seat, but then it had, they called it a captain's chair, like right behind the seat, where you could kind of sit up on it, and it was just sort of a plastic seat. And mine broke on the first one that I had, and then I got it warrantied, and then I broke the second one, the captain seat, and I figured out after that second one broke that it was because I was using ratchet straps, and the ratchet straps pulling the sides in, I was weakening that support underneath it and broke it. And yeah, so ratchet straps, good way to warp the hull, or like in the case of me, I'm sitting out there on the river paddling, and all of a sudden, boom, you go through the seat. And I mean, I was still able to use the lower seat, but I didn't like the lower seat. I want to be up high and be able to see. And it,
Yeah.
yeah, it was the ratchet straps, totally the ratchet straps that caused that. It wasn't a manufacturer defect. It was me crank it, crank it, crank it, crank. I mean,
Yep.
it just, and I was kind of like you. I heard people say, "Oh, don't do it," and I was like, "Oh, well, I won't tighten it too much." And yeah, I did.
Yeah, I mean, I had the same problem, like, extreme heat was doing the same thing, locking it down tight. Extreme cold, locking it down tight. Like, I would go out when it's snowing, there's a foot of snow on the ground, and I would still, like, I wouldn't go down a ramp type of deal, which, speaking of ramps, we have a show coming up where we're gonna talk about some kayak fishing etiquette, some know-hows of either at the ramp, on the water, things like that. More so to remind some current people, but also as a 101 guide for people getting into the sport of this isn't some it was not something to like try to ward you off or anything. Just something to know around is like a general respect for each other and things that if you do these things, you won't get yelled at by somebody else
Yeah,
at a ramp or anything like that fishing. Just help you guys know and be respectful because there are some times where we run into things on the water that it might piss you off, but majority of the time, the people that are doing it don't know, and it's just an education standpoint. So if somebody doesn't talk about it, how are people supposed to know? So we're gonna have a show coming about soon, where we talk about that. But back to what we're talking about here is, I think the last pro I would say for car topping is it's fairly low budget
hmm,
compared to, well, I'd say also truck bed is pretty low budget too, whereas
yeah.
trailer you can kind of get it in a little bit of expensive, but I think
Even
too.
if you have to buy a like one of like I think my newest vehicle has the side rails on it, so I had to buy the cross beams, but it was still way cheaper than buying a trailer of any kind.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah,
think you're right. It's the cheapest.
I think my Malone straps were the 2 bars, the suction cups, I think it was like $65 on Amazon or something like that, and then ratchet straps were like $20, and then the paracord and carabiner that I used to tie up the front and back was, I mean, that's $5.
Couple more bucks there.
Yeah, so it's fairly low budget to get that anyways, but I'd recommend if you do have a rather nice vehicle, and you don't wanna beat it up, don't car top. If you're okay with scratching and denting your car, yeah, you can car top if you don't want to do anything else. But
And they
um,
they make some, not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but they make some load assist features on some of these nicer, like the Yakin one that you were talking about. And then I've seen a couple different devices. I had one that was called the roller loader that I still have and still use occasionally. Um, but it's basically a metal frame. It's got suction cups on it, so you can stick it on either on the back hatch or on the side. It's got little hooks to hook into a little groove along the paneling, and it's got basically heavy duty wheels that roll, like almost like a mini. Trying to think what else you would see those wheels on, but pretty heavy duty little wheel. So you lay the kayak on that, and then just pick the base of it up and just slide it right up. And it's way nicer than some of the ones that have little rollers on them. But honestly, even those rollers are a lot better than nothing. Like what I was doing, I think what both of us were doing starting out, just setting on there and scratching. The little anything with little rollers on it will help you get it up there. And potentially, not cause the damage to the vehicle. But it, yeah, but if you don't want to cause any damage, don't put it up there.
there were some times where if I was trying to switch spots in a tournament, which that's a con of this, is it does take a while to unstrap, get it down, get your kayak set up, and get in the water. Same thing, loading. It definitely takes time to put everything in your car,
Oh yeah,
just put it on top, load it up, strap it down, make sure it's tight. It definitely takes a lot longer than some of the other methods we're going to go into. Um,
definitely.
but there's a few different things where there's times where I've been trying to switch mid tournament and I just like straight up didn't use the bath mat, just had rocks stuck to the kayak and slid it up the back of the car, just grinded the crap out of the trunk. It was it honestly kind of saved me when I returned it. I got more money for it because when I got rear-ended, the back trunk, there was scratches all up the back from doing that. And they replaced my trunk, so I got a brand new trunk, and it was great because I returned it. It looked like it was brand new.
They didn't
Uh,
realize it was previous damage.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, that totally happened in the crash. That was not me. Oh
It's
man,
like a
but
shower of rocks coming down.
pretty much, it looked like somebody took sandpaper and was just mad at the car, like just one solid line, and it was pretty bad. But I'll say some other cons here, and we'll get into truck bed. Is minimize storage when you're in a car. Definitely limits you. I'd say one thing I had issue wise was I'd bring a decent amount of gear, was kind of limited about in the amount of rods I could bring. Trying to fit in the passenger seat and trying to fit clothes and then tackle and things you need, kayak gear wise, pending what you could fit in your trunk. Um, but for me, one of the issues was too, I mean, there was times I was stupid and I leave my rods, take the reels off, put my rods in the horizontal rod storage in the Hobie, and then would transport it with my rods still in the kayak in that horizontal storage. Probably wasn't the smartest idea for the rods and taking care of them, but we made it work.
Shoot, I
Uh,
know guys that still do it that way. Like rods
yeah,
and
see,
everything intact in the hull of the boat.
I mean, they stay there. They're not gonna go anywhere. It's just more a matter of like when you get that all that road dirt and everything on there, it's not the smart, especially us here in the north with the salt, dude. When I would leave here,
Oh,
like, what was it? Which event was it? It was the first one I fished for Hobie. Why can't I remember that? I think I sucked. Oh, it was Toledo Bend. Yeah. I left in January or February when it was snowing. We had like a foot of snow, and dude, like by the time I got down to, I can't remember where I stopped. I think it was somewhere in the Carolinas, and I went and slept in my car that night. And dude, the front of my Hobie was white because of the salt on the road.
ugh.
It was really bad. Like I thought I had a white rope. My paracord was neon green, and it was flat white from all the salt that was getting kicked up. It
That's
was
crazy.
yeah. I mean, that's the only thing I'm like sitting there. I'm like, that's a dumb idea to put your rods up there. But again, you could do it. The other con is like if you're somebody like me that sleeps in their vehicle, especially when traveling, sleeping in a car sucks, especially when it's packed out and you got to sleep sitting up straight. Doesn't feel good on the back. Um, and I say the last one, unless you got any more here, Justin, is don't be dumb like me and try to off road with your Nissan Altima, because off roading in a
Ooh.
smaller vehicle is not. I did that, dude, and I knocked my front fender off at Toledo Bend.
Ah.
Yeah, it was not a good idea. I beat the hell out of that car. So off roading is not a pro for depending on your vehicle. I mean, the Grand Cherokee, obviously great. You can definitely make that work. That's
You
for damn sure.
can, but
Depending your
even
vehicle.
then, you still gotta be careful about where you take it. I mean, I've started down some roads just this past fall at Gunnersville. I started down a road getting to a fairly remote ramp, and I start getting seeing these giant potholes, and it had rained, I guess, fairly recently, and there's mud and big holes. You can't see how deep they are, and
Yeah,
I was I was puckered up for that.
I can
I
imagine.
was like, I I don't even know how far away I was from the actual ramp down this dirt road, but as soon as I got to a place where I could, basically pull a Yui, I was out of there. It I was fortunate that I did not get stuck. I've been stuck, driving down. I think it was a forest preserve or a national wildlife refuge. I was trying to do some photography and ignored the signs. Roads. I forget how they worded it, but basically, don't try to drive down here if
Don't
there's
do
been
this.
rain. Oh yeah, pretty much. Don't do it. And I was like, I could probably do it. My Jeep's good in the mud. And you get down there and you realize it's a foot deep and the
Yeah.
mud is halfway up the tires. And yeah, it's really embarrassing when you have to call for a tow out of one of those places. It's not cheap either.
Like, hey, you see that sign there? It's there for a reason. But it's like us men, dude. You see
Oh
a
yeah,
red do not touch button, you gotta touch it. Like it's
exactly.
yeah,
So yeah, you can mess up with any transportation method trying to go too far.
yeah. Well, all in all, I'd say car topping a very viable option. Definitely takes a little bit of more DIY, if you will. It can be very low budget, or you can kind of go in the upper end and get some pretty good gear if you're serious about doing it for a longer time. If you're in the short term, there's some great options that are super cheap to get it done. But the next one here is truck bed, which is the one I'm currently doing right now. I love it personally. It does have its cons, which we'll get into. But a truck bed, simply sliding that thing on there, strapping it in, especially if you, the nice thing, like most trucks have them, it's just like little rings that they have attached to the truck bed that you can use to strap certain things in. Um, that's the reason I like it mostly, dude, is it's so easy just to get in, out, like, especially when you think about from a tournament angler standpoint, if you want to uh, go from one ramp to the other, like on Santee Cooper when I was scrambling at the end of the day, the one day tournament we had for Hobie, I literally left everything in my kayak still, just threw the wheels on, or actually no, I backed up down the ramp really fast, threw the front end on, slid it in, slid a strap in, ratchet strapped it somewhat tight, and then had my rod still standing up and drove down the road to the next ramp. I don't advise doing that. That is not advice of do this, but I'm saying it shows you how quick you can do it from a truck bed standpoint. And you see guys like Drew Gregory, things like that, do it with the Tacoma. There's a method to why he has that vehicle, because he could fish 5 ramps in a tournament day. The dude's nuts, but it's very, very viable from that standpoint. Have you ever been able to? Have you had a truck where you've done this method before?
Never have. I've seen other guys do it, and like Drew was a good example. I've seen him. Well, I don't want to. I don't think it'd be considered a trade secret or anything, but he has a lot of stuff when he travels like to his destination. But then I think he pairs when he's actually doing the fishing, like he keeps it pretty simple. He doesn't have a ton of gear, and I think that's an important part of if you are gonna. I mean, you could say the same thing about car topping, but you really less is more in that situation. The less stuff you take with you, the less stuff you have to unpack and stick back in the vehicle and then unload again when you get to spot number two. So I think that truck style fits him really well just because of how simple he keeps everything when he fishes.
Yeah, and like you said, that's a perfect point. Like that's another reason why I think multiple people bring um not multiple people, excuse me, why people bring multiple kayaks is because
Mhm.
of they don't know what situation they're gonna be faced with. They want to be versatile, not just in their fishing, but also how or what they're fishing out of. So there are people that bring multiple kayaks to events for that reason. I think it's smart.
I've
I
done
think
it.
it's yeah, I think it's extremely smart. And that's where actually I think you and I have actually ran into each other for the first time was I think it was TOC at Caddo last year when you were up way up in the canal, and then we were launching way, way up there. No, I think you were car topping then.
I'm trying to
Yeah, you were
remember.
car topping then.
Way up in the canal. Are you talking about at Santee?
Maybe I was talking about Santee. I'm losing my mind over here. Ignore that. Ignore
I'm
that.
trying to remember because I don't.
You had the Jeep. I remember that. You and I were the only ones that launched. I want to say it was. You did fish Caddo last year, didn't you?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it was
yeah.
Caddo, like way over the. I think it was the west end, like way up.
I'm trying to remember. I've been a couple different times, and I think I'm getting
We'll
my
talk
years
about it after
confused.
people that
Yeah,
listen to
yeah,
this.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
like, "Hey,
Nobody,
guys, shut up."
they don't care.
We'll talk
No,
about it
that
afterwards.
wasn't it. That wasn't the first time.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, to run through the truck bed with you guys. It's super easy to use. I think the only equipment I recommend you getting, and obviously this is pending the kayak, like if you got an easy sit in or something like that, or you have like a crescent kayak, like the oh my gosh, I'm
Surely.
blanking on the model. Shoally, thank you. You got something like that, you don't need a bed extender. But if you got somebody like me where you have a Pro Angler 12 or 14, and pending your bed size you have the truck, like I have a 5'6", and that's a shorter bed. So I need a bed extender because otherwise, like your cock's sticking way out, and it's kind of a little sketchy. And obviously, you want to be, treat your vehicles right. If you got an old beater, obviously, you're not worried about beating it up. But um, for mine, I got a newer Ram. So what I did is I got a bed extender that just simply goes into the hitch. You lock it in. What it does is allows the you to put nose in first, keep the heavier end on the back on that bed extender. That way, it's super easy to get in and out of the vehicle. That's one thing. Like same thing with car topping. I'd recommend is you put the front end of your kayak in first. So like if you're car topping, have the nose of your kayak matching with the nose of the car. So like if you're in on the truck bed, have the butt end of your kayak be with the butt end of the truck, if that makes any sense. That way, if you bring it out, it's a pretty easy slide in, slide out method of putting it in there. But for me, it's I got rings in the back of my truck that I can take 2 ratchet straps. I ratchet the nose end of my pro angler from the front. That way I know for sure it's not going anywhere. And then I ratchet in the back so that it doesn't sway side to side when I'm turning. And that locks it in pretty good.
What does that
Um,
bed extender run? Couple hundred
I'm
for
trying to
one of
remember.
those?
Let me actually pull it up so I can give you legitimate data here because I use the I went and got the Boondocks one from Morgan Marine. Um, I think, and there, dude, there's ones literally like so the Boondocks one I have is $260. And that's I would say that is on the higher end. Like Yakima has one for $260. There's one at Cabela's for $140. And there's literally ones at Harbor Freight for 60. So like you can make it as cheap as you want. I've seen people literally mold their own out of stuff they got from work. So it's like you can make it as simple or as complex as you want it. I think it's fairly low budget. Um, Obviously, just depending how cheap you're. I think the only thing high that is high budget, expensive from a truck bed standpoint is the gas that you get using a truck.
Mm.
That's one of the biggest cons I have from this one, but we'll get into that in a second. But easy to strap in, easy transportation, getting in and out of spots, easy to load in, load out. I think the one thing compared to like car topping is like if it's a dead ramp, like obviously it's a pack ramp, I'm not gonna do this. I'm gonna bring my wheels, I'm gonna get out of people's way, and I'm gonna load up responsibly. But there are times where if it's an empty lot, empty ramp, no one's around, I will back my truck up all the way down to where I bring my kayak up, down like say a boat ramp, and load it in that way. And it's easy to do it that way. It's obviously the lazy way. Do not recommend doing that at a busy ramp because you will piss a lot of people off.
Everyone will hate you.
Everyone will hate you. um,
Dude, it's
but
gotta be easier on your knees and your back too, only having to go up, a couple feet versus, like, lift it up over your head. That's,
yeah.
it's gotta be less physically taxing.
Oh, dude, it's so much easier. And I want to caveat that too. Like, if there's people that have back and problems and things like that, they're probably using a trailer. But we'll get into that in the whole etiquette show of like how easy it is when you help each other out type of deal. But dude, yeah, I mean, for me, it's literally I lift the nose up to like basically almost chest level, if not hip, to get it onto that bed extender. I push it so it's towards the middle, so it's not falling off. And all I do is I walk to the back of my kayak. Reminder when you're doing this stuff, the lifter in me, use your legs, not your back, to lift these, especially when you have heavier kayaks. Grab the butt end and just squat up and walk forward with it. And it's super easy. And then I strap in. I could probably even do a video on how I load this thing up, but um, super easy. I think the only things I don't like about this that reasons why I've all been a little bit thinking about a trailer is it does limit your storage that you can do in the back of your truck bed. Now that being said, I've been able to put the kayak in there, and I've loaded like a tent in the back as well. I've loaded coolers. You can still do stuff like that, but I'm thinking when you're long term, you're somebody like me that likes to sleep in their truck, it can be limiting. Now,
That's
from a
fair.
security standpoint, you can get a truck cap and make the top section a storage space and keep the bottom for your kayak. That's something I've been looking into. That way you can make the back into a bed, the back of your inside of your truck, a bed, like the back seat. It just makes things you got to be a little more strategic on that. Whereas if you have a trailer, you can make the entire bed, especially if you have a cap, into storage. We'll get into that in a little bit. But the last thing I got that could be a con is mileage wise. Most trucks, obviously, you got V8 mileage isn't going to be great. One thing I'll say, and I will fully admit and hand over my man card, is I bought my Dodge Ram without a Hemi. It's a V6, and there was a reason for it, and it's because of literally that mileage. Like I get
Mm,
24, 25 on the highway, which I think for a truck is pretty decent.
yeah.
Um, but that is, I say, the one con is from a truck standpoint is gas mileage. It's not going to be very good. You can go the
But
route of V6 or like Ford has the Lightning with a hybrid, especially if you're traveling a lot. If you're doing every single Hobie event, a hybrid might be worth your money investment. That's a whole nother rabbit hole, by the way. My wife and I were looking at hybrids if they actually are worth it. If you drive, here's a total sidebar here for people. If you drive 15,000 miles a year, the way we clocked it, a Honda CRV hybrid versus a Honda CRV, just normal gas. I think it takes you 12 years. If you drive 15,000 miles a year, it takes you 12 years to make it worth it.
Okay.
Which was like, at that point, you're already getting a new car between now and
Right.
12 years.
It's gonna
So
be
we're like,
dead.
wait, so it's not
You're
even worth
driving.
the extra $8,000 to get a hybrid. So but if you're somebody that drives to all the Hobies and you're constantly doing events and you're driving, 30,000 miles a year, it might be worth your time getting a hybrid. But
Yeah,
yeah,
would that cut it in half almost? Be more like 4 years
yeah, I mean, I got to go back and do the math.
in theory?
My dad, who's much, much smarter than me, made this whole equation for figuring that out.
Nice.
Because they have that new, my bougie parents have the new all electric Jeep Cherokee, whatever. I don't know what it's
Okay.
called, but it's like a
I don't know.
spaceship. They came up in it for Christmas, and I was like, I hate you both. Uh, but nonetheless, I mean, personally, I think truck bed is a super, super easy option for transporting a kayak. But the next one is
Yeah.
one that, and the last one here is one that grew in popularity. Probably the last 4 or 5 years, especially like
Yeah.
there's a lot of people like jerry rigging like jet ski trailers and stuff. And now there's legitimate like custom and made kayak specific trailers. Like, you run one, so
So
I'm not even gonna try to go into this. You take it away on this one, man.
well, mine is I think you're definitely right that it's taken off in the last few years, and I think it's especially because the kayaks are getting bigger.
Mhm.
There's a lot more guys running bigger kayaks. You can take more stuff. The tournament competitors, anyway. Um, there's a lot of advantages to having that bigger boat, and it especially like you mentioned earlier, talking about the truck bed. If you've got say knee problems or back problems, and it's more difficult. You can't lift a whole lot of weight. That trailer is a really nice option.
Yeah.
So as the boats get bigger, I think it only makes sense to have trailers. And there's a huge variety. I know guys that have sort of done their own custom rigging. I got one from somebody that had custom rigged it himself, an old jet ski trailer. And I've honestly been thinking a lot about upgrading. Part of me
Yeah.
wishes I did not get the one that I have. At the time, it made a lot of sense. It's basically a a jet ski trailer, an old jet ski trailer, and the guy liked woodworking. He put a wooden box on top of it. So
Mhm.
the idea was you wouldn't be able to back into a ramp or back into the water. It's not a wet trailer, but that wooden box has a drop down flap on the back, and he put a drawer in it that pulls out that basically has 15 rod tubes in it. So I was thinking, shoot, I can have my kayak sitting on top, just slide the kayak off onto a cart and wheel the cart down to the water. But I'm essentially using that trailer for transporting rods. I could have 15 fully rigged rods underneath the kayak. And I think in theory it would have worked great. But that kayak is my kayak, the Outback on top of that lightweight, jet ski trailer with just basically a wooden box on it. It's not very heavy. And on the highway, it's moving around a lot to the point where I I I banged up reels, and I started looking and noticing that the handles were all scratched up from banging into each other. And yeah, it basically for that reason I had to take the rods out of it. I can't use it for that storage anymore. It was a good idea. It just in practice it didn't work. I mean, I got those neoprene reel covers and put them on all the reels,
Yeah.
and they banged together so much they wore through the neoprene. I even had a punch rod that I didn't use for a while. I had sitting down in the bottom, and slid it out of the tube one day and go to stick it in the kayak, and the handle's off. Like it shook and rattled enough to back the bolt off of the
Holy crap.
reel. The handle's like up inside the that wooden box, and that was kind of the okay, I can't do this anymore. Um, but yeah, not that's kind of a mine again is a custom one that I thought it was going to be great,
Yeah.
and in some ways it's still good. I have a rod pod up on the side. I could easily put another one on the other side. I can store a whole bunch of rods unrigged. and just stick the sleeves on them. If I'm not taking very many, and in the past I've stuffed newspaper in there to keep them from moving around in the tube. You can put some rods with reels on in the tube. Now you can't get nearly as many, but yeah, that to me that was the drawback of my trailer. But if we're talking just trailers in general, the big advantage is you can wet launch. Most trailers are designed to be able to back in the water, and that's a huge advantage in terms of time. And it's so much easier. I was at a ramp with Christine actually earlier this year, and I thought I was unloading pretty quick. I put the wheels on the cart, my little Boondocks landing gear, and I come dragging the kayak up the ramp and over to the vehicle, and then I'm taking everything out and loading. She backs down the ramp, pulls the kayak up onto the trailer, and drives off. And I'm like, I was like, okay, I don't, I'm doing it wrong. Uh, so they're really nice from that sense, and I've spent a lot of time looking at the different models. I think on the water innovations, if they weren't the first, they were one of the first, and I think
Mhm.
they're probably the one that's best known among the kayaking world. There's another one that's kind of cool. Have you heard of these Fish Texas guys? Fish Texas trailers?
I've heard of them. I don't know much about them. I know like there's a Tennessee one too, isn't there?
Tennessee trailer. I think they're doing some work with. I think they're doing like a custom version, or maybe it's not custom, but it's a specific version for dugout. So yeah,
Mm.
that's another good one. That's making heavy duty stuff.
Yakima makes a good one too.
I know guys with that one, and then this Fish Texas one is going to be comparable to the. I think you're on the water or your Tennessee trailer. It's heavy duty. It's going to run smoother. Mine, it's not as bad as if anybody who's ever driven like a U-Haul trailer that's empty down the road. It's not quite that bad, but that is not a fun experience. Having that thing just moving around behind the car with nothing in it.
Yeah.
Um, and those big ones, I've never driven one of those myself, but from what I hear and from looking at it, I can tell there's a lot more weight on that thing than on mine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely, when I get another trailer, I'm going to be getting one that I can actually back into the water and shave off all that loading and unloading time. It makes it to where in a tournament, you're not wasting as much time if you decide to move locations. You're not killing a whole hour, even if you're only driving 15 minutes down the road with your load and prep time.
Yeah. That's the
And
one
then
thing that scares me still about a trailer. Not I shouldn't say scare. That deters me from the trailer is I think even if I had that, I would go park and then use my wheels and bring my stuff down in the water simply for the pure fact that I mean, people that have trailers know that backing down a smaller trailer is not easy. And the
that's
last
true.
thing that I wanna do is be the guy at a pitch dark ramp, crowding out the ramp type deal because I can't see putting my where my kayaks go and the trailers in the back type of deal. Especially if you get a cap, it's harder to see behind you. The last thing I wanna be is that guy that's holding up a ramp, that type of deal. So I love the idea of a trailer, don't get me wrong. But I'd probably still be the guy that just goes and parks it and then takes the kayak down from there like you're doing.
It's a fair point. And honestly, I'm not the best at backing the one that I have because I like to, a lot of the times when I'm going to these tournaments, I'm camping. I'm trying to cut costs where I can. So I'll be at some campsite, and even just backing into a space, it it definitely is an acquired skill. It takes some work to get used to. Okay, I turn the wheel this way, and the end goes that way. It takes a little bit of time. Now, once you do it for a while, it becomes more natural. But I've still had that thought. That's that exact same thought of, what's it going to be like when I actually am backing down a ramp? Because it's a different
Yeah.
thing than just backing. I mean, even backing into something level. To me, when I upgrade, one of the first things I'm going to do is just drive to a ramp, middle of the week, nobody there, and just drive up, drive down, back up, and just do it a whole bunch of times to get reps. Because
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy on the ramp either.
Yeah, I'd say, the nice part about kayak trailers anyway, though, is you get it somewhat close and you can always get out and literally pick it up and move it over.
You
You'll
can.
be fine.
That
Yeah.
is true.
Okay, what
And
are some of the cons?
for me, I parking, I would say, is one. It's a little trickier to park. You've got to have those extended spaces. Um, and then even just sort of on the highway moving around, it's you get once you do it a while, you kind of get used to having a trailer back there and taking wider turns. But it is something you have to think about. I mean, pulling into a what you call it, like a hotel. If I'm going to stay in a hotel somewhere, I've got to okay, where am I going to? Do you have parking available? Not every one of them does, so it's an extra thing you got to consider. Is there enough space in this campsite where I can get a trailer and a tent, or even going through the drive-through? Like you stop at McDonald's to grab something to eat at the end of the day, and it's something else to think about. It's not necessarily it's not necessarily something that would make me not get a trailer, but it's something you got to be aware of before you get one.
Yeah.
And then the other one is just to me is price. So we talked about the custom trailers. They are awesome. Like the amount of features you can get on them, like the Yakima rod box that you can throw on there, the like a winch strap to make it easier to load and unload. I mean, there's all kinds of nice stuff, but they are not cheap. I mean, the high end ones, I want to say they start around $3,000. And if you're not, if you go much below that,
Mhm.
I feel like if I was to buy one that was just a bare bones model, like it wouldn't have some of the fun features that I want. Like by the time you start tacking on all the rod pod, the Yakima box, straps, like retractable straps, it starts adding, and that price starts getting high. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think it's anything to spend $5,000 or $6,000 on a fancy kayak trailer. And you start getting a double trailer, a wider one with the what do you call them? The beams, I guess, for two.
Mhm.
Like the price just starts going up.
Oh,
It's
no. Yep.
not cheap.
Definitely on the
And
other side of the spectrum from car topping and using a truck bed.
yeah. And that's been a consideration for me because I'm looking at it like, I've got $3,500 tied up in my Outback. It's hard for me to spend more on a trailer than on the kayak itself.
Yeah.
I can see in I'm getting close to the point where I'm willing to spend the money. um, because of all the advantages of just the simplicity and the quickness of loading and unloading. I think it'll be worth it. And for me, another big one is getting rods out of the car. That was part. I was talking about the trailer that I got that didn't work out. Well, with these other ones, if you put two Yakima rod boxes, I think those hold 8 rods each,
Mhm.
fully rigged out. I mean, you're talking 16 rods. I mean, that's enough. You can carry 16 rods fully rigged in those Yakima boxes. If you throw a rod tube on there, you can carry probably 30 unrigged rods for anybody that even has that many. So that that's another big plus for me is not having rods in the car. It's hard for me, like, to sleep in the car because I've got one whole half of it taken up with rods. It just and then you run the risk of if you start stacking gear on the other side, stuff slips. You got to worry about damaging rods. I want very badly to get all those rods out of the car and into something that's going to be secure where they're not going to get beaten up.
Yeah.
And then just kind of free up some space to where, hey, if I am, you know, maybe I'm driving to Texas and that, it's a for me anyway to be a 2 day drive. I- I'm I'm not trying to do a 20 hours straight, but you stop that first night, just be able to sleep in the car and it not be a big deal. Uh,
Yeah.
I feel like that's a big plus. You start doing very many tournaments, having the ability to actually sleep in the car, uh, or actually, I should say, be able to like stretch out in the car and not
Yes.
sleep like this. It's hard to sleep like this for me.
I think part of my hip and back problems as a 26-year-old is because of sleeping in the Altima so many times. A firm believer in that. But, dude, I mean, the trailer is one where if you're serious about this thing, like traveling, whether take tournaments out of the picture, like if you're just simply traveling a lot with your kayak and adventuring, things like that, a trailer is probably worth it. And from a tournament standpoint, bringing that back around, it's probably worth you having that extra storage. Like the way I look at it, going back to this perfect world, if I was able to fish all of the Hobies and all the Bassmaster ones, I would ideally have a trailer. and they'll probably would go with one of the, the Yakimas or one of these custom ones that you're talking about that's got the fancy gadgets that makes life easy.
Mhm.
That way, what I could do is get a cap for the truck that's so it's secure, a great storage system in the back, a deck system, and then what you can do is on the back seat of the truck have an inflatable mattress that fits like a Jenga puzzle on that back seat, so you could
Nice.
sprawl out and have a nice little air mattress and things to be privately secure and warmer in the cab of your truck. And that way you can have some more little storage in there and power options. But that just I think that trailer, I mean, you can make it relatively cheap. Like we were talking about earlier, like you're talking about with the jet ski trailers, and you can modify those a little bit. You can make it somewhat low budget. But I think a trailer is definitely for people that are either one want that ease of use and can justify the price, or people that are very serious about traveling and fishing heavily.
Yeah, and my advice would be if you're going to get a trailer, get something, the old adage, "Buy once, cry once." I I spent $2,000 on a trailer where if I just and now I'm after a couple of years, I'm not really happy with it. It's functional, but if I'd have spent, saved a little more and spent a little more, I'd have something that would still last me for who knows how many more years.
Yeah.
So I I regret, the not getting a higher end one just out of the gate with as much as I've used it and traveled for tournaments.
Yeah. And I'll say one thing to add on top of that too, being that it's more expensive on this side, is you do have to register those trailers. Do remember that. Just because it's a
Yeah.
kayak doesn't mean that you don't have to register it.
Yeah.
And I'll add that too, just going on the stance of this is like if you do truck bed, highly advise, regardless of how big your kayak is, putting something flashy, vibrant, or reflective on the back end of your kayak for people that are driving behind that obviously don't pay attention. There's a bunch of people that don't pay attention
Those
because,
little flags are nice. Little,
yep.
I know what Yak Attack makes them. I'm sure there's other people that make the
Yeah,
little
there's a whole
flag.
bunch of brands. They're like $5. It's super easy. Just do a little loop, put it on there. And it'll save you from potentially getting an accident because I know anybody that tries to hit me will run right into a torpedo bracket right there on the back, and that would not be nice for their vehicle. But yeah. Uh, anything else on the trailer, man?
No, not on the trailer. I did remember, I don't know if I'd call it a con, but a little bit of a story for car topping, probably
Oh,
my worst car topping experience. And I don't wanna dissuade people from doing it because mine was an older vehicle, but probably why I'm so conscious of the weight on those things is I was probably doing 70, I was probably over 70 on, Interstate 95 down in the Woodbridge area, and I hear this loud boom. It almost sounded like a gunshot, and all of a sudden, my kayak is hanging from the straps down, it didn't hit the road, I didn't damage it, I don't know how, I guess the way I had it wrapped, it just somehow didn't come loose. It was borderline miraculous, but
oh my god.
the rack itself didn't break. The bolts that were holding the standard rack in the roof of the vehicle, 2 of them ripped out driving down the road. So that was the sound I heard, and then, I've got basically 2 bolts holding it in, the rack's all twisted, and, yeah, maybe it was a lemon, a bad one, maybe it was just old, but I had to, you know, pay some guy to custom weld to basically put bolts on it and fix it. So it's, I still do car top, I'm just very conscious of the amount of weight that's going in it, and that's what I would encourage people to do is, I'm not saying you can't car top a pro angler, but like do some research and figure out what your vehicle can actually hold before you do it. Um, the stuff I'm car topping now, I've got an ultralight that thing's 50 pounds. It's easy. My Outback, if for some reason I decide to ditch a trailer and drive into some remote backwoods area, I can still do that. I will occasionally, but I try to keep it light for car topping.
I'll say that too, and like from a back to car topping quick is try driving on a low populated road or even a parking lot before you go and try and go on a road trip. Don't be like me and do the old redneck. Yep, that'll do. That ain't going anywhere. And just go on a 1,000-mile road trip hoping for the best. Thankfully, I made it out alive, but definitely try to test and trial, especially if you're going to Cartop, being that you do have other not to try to scare anybody, because it's if you get the system right, it can be a secure, viable option. Just make sure you test it out first. Like, don't be afraid to really throw some weight around on it to make sure the vehicle and your car topping system will hold up. Like, do some whips around a parking lot, make sure that thing can stay on there.
Yeah, check your cam straps. You push from the front, push from the back. See, make sure you're not moving. That's what I'm trying to do anyway. When I'm cinching down the cam straps, it's just
Yeah.
I don't want it to slide. And as
I,
long
and
as
I,
it's not sliding, it's good.
yeah, I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like if you can, and especially if you're in a vehicle that you're not too worried about some scratches here and there, definitely recommend the front strap if you can do it. I feel
Mm,
like they give some people some peace of mind. At least it did for me. Like, when you're driving and worried about air coming up to the front of your nose and pushing up on the kayak, that made me feel much better, because it would put the stress on that carabiner to a straight metal clamp on the front versus
mm,
being the pressure being on your ratchet straps on the rails. Like, at least for me, where I had to use the suction cup ones.
mm. That's
It
a
was a
good
little
point.
bit of peace of mind. But obviously, I know some people that don't want that rub rash on the hood of the nice vehicle. So it might not be for everybody, but nonetheless, that's a bunch of options and pros and cons if you're weighing out what you guys want to do, whether you're getting into the sport or you're already in the sport and you're thinking about a change. Hopefully that answered all of it. If you got questions, drop them in the comments on this video. Reach out to us on Kayak Fishing Weekly on social media, or hit up Justin or I personally. Would be happy to help you guys with that. And hopefully
Definitely.
you took something away from this and made fun of us a little bit too along the way. But man, I would be starting the audio, but for whatever reason, it seems like the kayak fishing kings and queens of the week audio is not working too well on my soundboard. But nonetheless, our segment can you hear it?
It sounds faint, like it's muffled.
Gosh, the soundboard is going to be the death of me, I swear. I was super excited to get it and play around with it, and then I'm like, yeah, I can't hear anything. I'm like, what the? Spoiled all the fun. But nonetheless, our favorite segment of the show, and that is our kayak fishing kings and queens of the week. And we have two more for this week. Obviously, it's going to be kind of slow for the segment in the wintertime because there's no tournaments, not as many people out and active in the wintertime from the kayak standpoint. But nonetheless, we do have two people to shout out here. And it seems like we had the same trend of thinking, Justin, both YouTubers.
Yeah, yeah, influencers, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Let it rip, man. Who you got?
shoot, my pick for the week, Summertime Outdoors. I believe they have the same handle for both the YouTube page and for Instagram. But I saw him initially on Instagram, just a short little reel, and then checked him out on YouTube, and oh my gosh, the footage. Uh, yeah, I'm not sure the creator's name, but his page is the strikes that he catches or catches on camera are very very impressive. It's some juicy content. He does a lot of saltwater, catching snook, other species, but then he also does some bass fishing. But a lot of these, he's actually super shallow and flats. I mean, just the kind of stuff that I love to do in a kayak. I'm not the biggest saltwater guy, but the way that he does it is it's the way that I would do it. I mean, he's super shallow, watching reds, watching snook, just amazing footage that he catches. I've very impressed with his content, and I watched a bunch of it this afternoon after I found him.
Yeah, so this kid has some videos that, and we don't know him, by the way. Let's preface this too. His name
Mhm.
is Ethan Sommer. I just looked it up here on Instagram because that's where I follow him from. But Justin and I have shared his content back and forth because he literally does some pretty epic stuff. Saltwater kayak guy, like Justin was saying, and it is legit. Like, even if you're not a heavy saltwater angler like myself, we're obviously living in New York. I enjoy the living heck out of his content. He's very much kind of like a Nolan Miner with some of his kayak fishing content.
Mm.
This dude just literally has some pretty epic blow ups and action that he posts. So great call out here. Only 1K subs. Videos like viewership for what I've been seeing for this guy needs to be way bigger.
I was very surprised by that. I thought he would be like a whole lot more, like closer to the 50 to 100K. It's really impressive.
What I'll do is, like I do for all these, is we link their channels and things like that. So we'll do for this guy is we'll link his YouTube channel down in the description. Highly recommend you guys go and subscribe. Check him out on social. Social's big. He's got 30,000 followers, and social only 3,000 subs on YouTube, and posts rather actively in the past. Let's see, month. He's got about 4 or 5, maybe 6 videos. So he's active, worth following.
He's got some hunting content too for
Yeah,
guys that like that,
I can get
and
behind that.
some boat content.
He's all over, man. Just an outdoorsy kid. Can respect the hell out of that. So my guy, another in line we on the YouTube side of things, one that is putting out some pretty sick content. I like his passion and enthusiasm for it, and kind of how he's just he's definitely out there one for the enjoyment, the adventure, but also seemingly is interested to keep learning, and I absolutely love that. And that is Yak and Zach. And I feel bad because I've been following him on social for a little while. Subscribe to his YouTube channel, but I don't even know his name. I don't know. All I know him by is Yak and Zach, and I feel like I've seen his stickers. Like I think he has stickers that he's
I'm gonna
placed in other
guess.
places
I'm
up
gonna
here in
guess
New York.
Zach.
I'm assuming Zach. You know, you would be
Yeah.
smart in saying that. Just now, like when you said that,
I'm guessing, but I don't know.
I feel like this is where I feel like such an idiot sometimes in my life,
No,
where it's like
man.
things are glaring me in the face. Where I'm like, Yak and Zach just kind of sounds like a cool exchange of words. Where you're like, maybe his name is Zach. You know what, Justin? That would make sense.
Dude, I thought summertime. I thought maybe Summer was his last name, like Sommer, but I don't know.
That's a great point, and I feel like you should just reach to his camera and slap me in the face for not.
Nah.
Yeah. What if it's not? That'd be actually kind of funny. Uh, but nonetheless, I'm gonna link his channel down here. Recommend you guys go in and follow him along. But he puts out some really good content, and again, love the passion, and enthusiasm that he's got. So check those out. It's down in the link below. But dude, I am staring at a foot of snow here in
Are you
Buffalo.
serious?
Yeah, we woke up to a about 8 to 10 inches this morning, and they kept. It's still raining down right now.
Oh,
So it's not going fishing this weekend. I think it's pretty much done unless the wind's okay and I can sneak out on a buddy's boat. But I think I'm going to err on the side of not fishing from the kayak this weekend, which means more editing for the YouTube channel so I can get some more videos out because I've been slacking over the holidays. But what do you got coming up, man? Are you hitting the water or anything?
I'm probably not this weekend. I'm not sure. I've got some family coming to town, and I picked up another bug, another one of those little cold viruses from my nieces. They seem to
Damn
stay
kids,
sick,
man.
but yeah, I definitely want to get back out there. My blackfish gear came in the other day, so I've been
Hey,
testing
yo.
that a little bit. I like it. It is very warm, and I feel like I can go out there and maybe not be miserable, and hopefully find a few fish that are willing to bite. But I'm definitely going to go out and as soon as I get a chance, if not this weekend, and maybe early next week, sneak out for a few hours.
Yeah, dude, I was thinking about that. I was like, conditions supposed to be crappy, which obviously is good. You want those in your favor, especially this time of year. But like I was thinking about going to Niagara River, try to catch smallmouth, but I'm like, hmm, should I go out when it's 20-mile-an-hour winds, blizzard? The water air temp is 28 and the water temp is probably around 34 in a ripping river. Probably not the smartest idea, especially because I don't want a wetsuit. And I'm like, as much as I love my blackfish gear and I'll be fine in it, if I go in, I am screwed. So I'm
Yeah,
like, you know what? I might just err on the side of caution for this one, and just get some more work done that I slacked off on the past couple weeks. So, nonetheless, we got some adventures coming up, and while I mean, it is January, man. It is 2024, so that means, I mean, you're gonna be traveling for a Hobie event in 3 weeks, basically.
I've already started prepping. Yeah,
I'm so
I'm
jealous.
yeah,
I'll
I'm
be prepping for a honeymoon. That is what I'm prepping for. So I'm going somewhere warm, but I'm not fishing.
it still sounds fun. Honeymoon. I
Yeah.
can't complain about that.
No, if I did, I'd get slapped by not through this screen, but who's staring at me in the face right now.
Yeah, Yeah,
But
I'm excited about Florida. I feel like Florida's a place anybody can go. Well, for those of us that aren't in a climate that warm, it's a place you can go in January and still have a chance at some really big fish and have fun.
it's
Where
fun.
like it's not as bad here for me. It's frozen for you. Um, but yeah, like you said, down there, there's some on beds already, I'm sure. I'm hoping to sight fish. If I can look at them, I'm happy. If
Yeah,
not,
I got a
catch them some other way.
text got a text from my buddy that lives down there and said, "Hey," because I had some other plans I was thinking about a while ago and was texting him about it and potentially going to try to like link up because I don't get to see him very often. And I was like, "Hey, if I'm able to come down there this time, like, are you free? How's work look? I'd love to come see you. You know, get some beers and food, maybe fish a day." And he's like, "Hey, you still able to come down?" He goes, "It's getting freaky right now." And I'm like, "Dang it, no, and I can't go down there this month." I'm like, "Son of a-" it just hurts me. So I'll live vicariously through you, my friend. But I'm hoping to put together some trips this year, nonetheless. But
Awesome.
it's awesome, man. I'm enjoying uh, the build up here coming up for 2024 and the season coming up, and I'm excited for the year to come. Hopefully, you guys are excited as well. Let us know your New Year's resolutions down below, especially if they're fishing related. We'll love to hear what those are. And I'd say last thing before we wrap this sucker up is if you guys are enjoying the MP3 podcast form of this show, please leave us a rating and review. Helps us out big time. Let us know what you think of it. You can say how Justin is awesome and how Bailey doesn't know what the heck he's talking about.
Or the opposite.
Give us an honest rating and review. It'd be much appreciated. But Justin, great show, my friend. And folks, we'll be back next week. See y'all then.